Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Cristobal that is right now a tropical depression but is very quickly going to rebound back into Tropical Storm Cristobal. Now before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. Now for today's comment of the day, if you have one, I want to know, what is your favorite weather model out there? Let me know in the comments down below and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now let's get into this video. We're taking a look at satellite, and this is a sad sight. This tropical storm is tropical depression is struggling mightily right now. This does not look like a healthy storm. However, it is over land right now, and that has a lot to do with what we're seeing right here. Once it moves over water, it will quickly recover. Alright, now let's go ahead and take a look at that low pressure center real quickly like I always do, and you can see that the low pressure center is on land and it's heading almost directly north or northeast, so this one isn't going to take the quick route to get to the water, which would be westward. It is going to head northward, so it is going to take a little while for this one to get back over water. But once it does, it should develop really quickly once again. As it makes its way towards Louisiana, we are almost 85 to 90% sure, I would say, that this one is going to make impact with Louisiana and probably not another state. But there is still some odds that it does hit Texas or maybe Mississippi or Alabama. Maybe even a very slim chance that it hits the Florida Panhandle. But really, we're really narrowing it down to Louisiana at this point. Alright, now we're about to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at NOAA's cone of uncertainty here, and we're going to take a look at what they have to say, and then we're going to take a look at some of those spaghetti models as well, which are always very useful. We're going to get into all of that coming up soon. Alright, and here is their cone from NOAA, and you can see that this one is going to head directly north like I said, but already by 1 a.m. tonight, it is going to be probably back to tropical storm status, and it's just going to move northward and just continue to stay tropical storm status. It's going to very slowly make its way across the Gulf, but look at that. NOAA is almost certain that this one will hit Louisiana as a tropical storm at about 1 a.m. on Monday is their estimation at this point, and then it's going to kind of very quickly move over land through Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and then possibly even Illinois. It'll be very weak by that point, but could bring a lot of rain to a lot of areas, which is very interesting, very far up northward. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're about to move on to our spaghetti models. We're going to take a look at all of the models, the one that has all of the models, and then we're going to take a look at some of the ensemble models like the CMC ensemble model, the GFS ensemble model, and the European ensemble model, and then we're going to kind of get into some of those model guidance like the total rainfall, the wind, things like that, and then we're going to get into our official direct weather forecast for Tropical Storm Cristobal at this point. Alright, and here we are taking a look at our spaghetti models, and you can see they are actually narrowing down a lot, which is like what you want to see at this point. They were all over the place last time I made an update, but as you can see, they are very much so narrowed it down to a high likelihood of a Louisiana impact. There are a couple that take it pretty far eastward, and this is new. A lot of them weren't showing that before, but now all of a sudden we are having some of these ones bend out eastward, and we're going to want to keep an eye on that because that could be a trend. This one could move a little bit further westward, eastward. Once it gets over water, we're going to have a much clearer idea of what to expect with this one. Louisiana is the most likely outcome here, but you can see there are a couple that show Mississippi. I see there's one that shows Alabama, and then there's two that show a very far western Florida Panhandle impact. They're on the very western tip of the Florida Panhandle. Now let's go ahead and move on to some of our ensemble models. I like to see that, though, that they all narrow down. And here's the CMC ensemble model. This one doesn't have a lot of members. This one is a little bit all over the place, but you can see probably about at least 70% of these show a Louisiana impact. And then there's two that show a Mississippi impact, and then one with that Alabama impact. But you can see the mean average, which is indicated by that black line. And you can see that that pretty much hits Louisiana head on, just like what a lot of our models were showing on the most previous frame that I showed. Let's move on to that GFS ensemble model, and as you can see, this is pretty much the same story, except these ones are a little bit more narrow than what the Canadian ensemble model is showing. The Canadian ensemble model isn't really known for much, so I'm not surprised to see that one kind of be all over the place. The GFS ensemble model and the European ensemble model are much more respected models, but like I said, this one is showing that mean average hit head on to Louisiana and then head straight through up into northern Louisiana through Arkansas, Missouri, and then back through Illinois, potentially heading into Canada as maybe, just a normal low pressure system, something like that, but still going to be a pretty big rainmaker. All right, now what we're going to do is we're about to move on. We're going to take a look at that European ensemble model, and then we're also going to get into that modeled guidance as far as intensity guidance and total rainfall and wind impacts for Louisiana potentially, like I said before. All right, now what we're taking a look at here is our European ensemble model, and as you can see, this one has indicated by that black line, a mean average that is pretty much the same as the Canadian model and the GFS ensemble model. My confidence is very much so increasing in this potential track that takes us straight towards Louisiana, like I stated before, and this is why. The models have really narrowed it down, and they seem to have really good control over what they think is going to happen here. There is maybe 2 or 3 members there that show a Texas impact. None of these ones show a Mississippi or Alabama or Florida impact. So they are almost certain that this one is going to hit in through Louisiana. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at those low pressure centers and what each of these models individually has to say. We're going to take a look at the Canadian model, European model, and also the European model and take a look at just what they think and where they think this one's going to hit. So first off, here's the Canadian model, and you can see, and this isn't the Canadian ensemble model, this is the Canadian model. So this is just one member that is the main one. And you can see it has kind of an eastern Louisiana impact there. Let's take a look at what the GFS says, and it's a little bit further west, but very close for how far out we are. Very impressed with that certainty. And here's that European model, again, maybe like 5 miles westward from what the GFS showed. So they are very confident on where they think this one is going to impact, and I like to see that as a forecaster. That is really what I want to see when I'm about to make my forecast for a storm. When the models come together like that, that is a very good sign that they have a really good idea of what to expect here. So what I'm going to do here is give you guys kind of just an updated look at the intensity guidance from all of these models. Again, this works just the same way as the spaghetti models, except it's kind of just a graph that shows the intensity here. Each line is an individual model, again, just like the spaghetti models. And you can see we were thinking a stronger tropical storm towards the top end of that green box. But now the models have trended towards a weaker tropical storm, potentially somewhere in between 34 and 50 knot winds is the expected intensity before it makes landfall. So we have gotten a little bit weaker with this, probably about 10 knots or so. Not going to make a huge difference when it comes to the end total of winds and rainfall, but really it is just looking at a little bit of a weaker storm. But you can see all of them at this point have this one regaining tropical storm status, and then about by time it hits land at about that 72-hour mark, it'll go back into tropical depression status. All right, now we're about to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that total rainfall according to all of these models. Well, the GFS and the Canadian one, and then we're going to take a look at our official direct weather forecast. All right, now taking a look at the total rainfall, you can see that in the green we have 0.1 to about 0.5 inches of rain. In the blues, that's where we have about 0.5 to 1 inch of rain. And then in the purple, that's where we have 1 to 2 inches of rain, red 2 to 4 inches of rain, and then the gold colors is where we're at about 4 inches to even 15 inches plus in those darker brown shades. You can see we only get into the lighter shades here for portions of Louisiana and Florida, and that's going to be areas where we see about 4, 5, 6 inches of rain, which is a lot, but we're going to see more when we move on to the Canadian model. This was the GFS model. Let's go ahead and take a look at that Canadian model and take a look at the difference here. It doesn't have the storm tracking into Florida, but it does have most of the impacts hitting Florida, because remember, we showed where the Canadian model has it impacting and it was over Louisiana. But a lot of the rain moves towards the Florida Panhandle and maybe even in through southern Georgia and southern Alabama there. But that's 12.5 inches being picked up there on the Florida Panhandle. If this Canadian model solution was to occur, we would be looking at huge flooding problems for the Panhandle of Florida there, with tons and tons of rain expected from this model. Also, the total wind, you can see we're at about 35 to 45 knot winds here on the GFS model. Again, maybe peaking around 50 knots, and then here's that Canadian model. So they both have those reds moving on shore to coastal Louisiana. Not a lot of people live near coastal Louisiana there on that end of it, but we do see that there is 35 to 45 knot winds moving on shore for those areas. So if you do happen to live in that area, please be on the lookout for impacts such as that. Now here's our official direct weather forecast for this one. You can see it is expected to move north. My cone is a little bit wider than what NOAA had to say. You know, I want to play this one safe. I do expect that this one could move a little bit further eastward or westward currently than what we're expecting, because I've seen this happen before where the models narrow it down a few days out, but then they kind of shift, all of them together shift eastward or westward, and I just want to be careful because that is still possible. So Mississippi and Alabama, you're not quite safe yet. Again, Florida Panhandle, the very western edge of it, you might not be safe. And even I wouldn't be super surprised if we saw this one shift westward enough to maybe make impact there with very far eastern Texas. But at this point, a eastern Louisiana impact, head-on impact, seems to be the most likely outcome at this point. And it's going to make its way northward over land and potentially bring a lot of rainfall to a lot of you guys as well. Anyway, for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, at this point, would you prefer a warm-up that brings 90s or a cool-down that brings about 70s or 80s? And Wyatt Smith said a warm-up. He hasn't even reached 90 where he lives. And I could understand if you haven't hit 90s that you just want it to warm up. I really like the warm weather this time of year, and I'm usually tired of it by August or September. I know a lot of you probably feel that same way. Let me know if you do. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.